Hello, my dear Minnow friends. Welcome back to Menopause Taylor. That's me, and all my educational tutorials on menopause. If you're new to this channel, you should know that this is video number 186. And the reason I tell you the number of the video is because this is unlike most YouTube channels in which it really doesn't matter whether or not you watch videos in order. This channel is somewhat like Menopause University. And as with any educational endeavor, the order in which you learn the material does matter. That's why you had to learn the alphabet before you could learn to read. So I tell you the number of the video so that you know where we are. And I deliver the material to you in units, very organized, carefully planned, specifically ordered units. I'm a control freak about the order of these videos. Why? Because your entire menopause education depends on your ability to understand absolutely everything. And there's no way you'll understand everything if you approach the material in a chaotic manner. So we just finished an entire unit on heart attack that included all the videos in order from video 160 to 185. And now that we're finished with that unit, I want to address some lighter topics before delving into the next big unit, which will be on osteoporosis. So this is going to be a unit on the problems, principles, and powers of menopause management. I think it's good to stand back and take a look at the big picture once in a while. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I address everything on every level. And I do that to make sure you don't get bogged down with one detail or another. I work really hard to ensure that you never lose sight of the fact that your menopause management involves balancing a lot of different factors and choosing the management options that are best for you. So the next few videos, specifically videos 186 through 195, will address some of the big picture aspects of menopause. They're all about the problems, principles, and powers of menopause management. And the title of this video is Happily Ever After Menopause. In it, I'll discuss how your story can be once upon a time, you became menopausal and you lived happily ever after. If you have even one negative thought about menopause, you definitely need to watch this video. Do you remember all the fairy tales you read as a little kid? Let's see. There's Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, and a whole host of others. They all started with once upon a time, and they all end with, and they all lived happily ever after. They're whimsical, dramatic, and animated. As children, we read these stories, and although we know they're stories, there's a part of us that assumes that real life is supposed to turn out that same way, happily ever after. So I want to use this desire for the happily ever after as a central focus for our tutorial today. And as juvenile as this may sound so far, I assure you that it won't remain so. You see, the problem with these fairy tales is they set us up for wanting to be the fairest of them all, the beauty, and to remain so forever, which in a fairy tale is precisely how we'll manage to live happily ever after. These stories end when the pretty protagonist is still fertile, vibrant, sexy, and pre-menopausal. I have yet to find a fairy tale about a young protagonist who transitions through menopause but remains the fairest of them all and lives happily ever after. But when you get to menopausal age, that's exactly what you want. So I'm here to tell you how to achieve it. And if you learn what I have to teach you by watching all my videos in order, you really can live happily ever after. There are many steps on the path that leads to a happily ever after menopause. I'm going to present them all because each of us has a role to play in setting the stage for a happily ever after menopause for all the females we know. Your once upon a time starts when your mother sits you down as a preteen to have a little talk. This is when she teaches you about the birds and the bees, as they say. I've never understood why people refer to sex as the birds and the bees. But usually this conversation between mother and daughter is a warning about the inevitable first period. In essence, it's when your mother tells you that you are about to enter your reproductive phase of life. And I think it's great for every mother to have this conversation with her daughters. In some cultures, there's a lot more than just a conversation. Just think about all the rituals, celebrations, and rites of passage that come with puberty. In some cultures, puberty marks the greatest and most celebrated achievement of all. It's the beginning of a happily ever after existence. But why is it that mothers tell their daughters only about the beginning of their reproductive life, and in the conversation with a happily ever after as if that's all there is? The fact is that that's not all there is. There's an end to your reproductive life, and it's called menopause. So why don't moms prepare you for both? All mom has to say is, honey, pretty soon you're going to begin your reproductive life. And when you're about 50, you're going to end your reproductive life. It's all one big circle, and you'll live happily ever after. If you only learn about the beginning of your reproductive life and nothing beyond that, you assume that you're doomed when it ends. You're not doomed because of menopause. You can still live happily ever after. Just think about how differently you would embrace menopause if you had first heard about it as the bookend to your first period. If you had known that your reproductive life was not your happily ever after, you might have even looked forward to menopause. The next issue is preparation. How much of your life did you spend being pregnant? And how much did you prepare for pregnancy? I'm going to guess that you spent somewhere between 9 and 45 months of your entire life pregnant. That would amount to between 1 and 5 pregnancies. But in the big picture of life, it really doesn't constitute that much time. Nevertheless, you probably made plans to get pregnant, rejoiced when you discovered that you were pregnant, read books about being pregnant, pondered baby names while you were pregnant, or maybe even before, shopped for the best obstetrician for your pregnancy, went to the doctor's office multiple times while pregnant, talked a lot about being pregnant, went to birthing classes while pregnant, bought all sorts of baby furniture and baby accessories while you were pregnant, learned everything you could about the best diet while pregnant, took the very best care of yourself while pregnant, asked questions about your options for delivery, researched the pros and cons of various types of pain relief during labor, created a birth plan, addressed the different hospitals for delivery, etc., etc., etc. And having a child is definitely viewed as part of one's happily ever after. It's one of the most joyous events in life, despite all the things about pregnancy and childbirth that we really don't like, such as the awful morning sickness, the painful breaths, that bloated feeling before you ever even gain weight, the actual weight gain, the leaking of urine, the physical discomfort of carrying around an extra 35 pounds, the varicose veins, the hemorrhoids, the long, intense pain of labor, the risks associated with pregnancy and delivery themselves like blood clots, high blood pressure, heavy bleeding, even death. Despite all that, you perceived the entire event as part of your happily ever after. And you poured yourself into the pregnancy and subsequent parenthood with very positive outlooks for your future. And you probably talked about it afterward as one of the greatest things that has ever happened to you. The planning and preparation you put into pregnancy probably encompassed the majority of your time, all for a very small portion of your life. How much preparation did you put into anticipating menopause? Let's see, menopause will constitute 1/3 to 1/2 of your entire life. Did you plan for it? Did you prepare in advance for it? Do you see it as part of your happily ever after? Did you embrace it positively? Did you learn as much as you could about it before it hit you over the head like a ton of bricks? Did you talk about it beforehand? Do you talk about it now? Have you considered it a time to take the best possible care of yourself and eat the best diet? Do you see the difference? Why would you ignore the longest and most important phase of your life? Happily ever after doesn't just happen. You have to create it. If you fail to prepare for your menopausal life, it probably won't end with, "and she lived happily ever after." And what about symptoms? Let's see, you had a long list of symptoms when you went through puberty. If you don't recall, just ask your parents. You had mood swings, irritability, depression, cravings for sweets and carbs, weight gain, acne, increased sex drive, headaches, inability to concentrate on anything but boys. You grew boobs, pubic and axillary hair, and you started your periods. Sure, you didn't like some of those things at first, but you got used to them and you considered them normal. And you embarked on your happily ever after for that portion of your life. And what about the symptoms during pregnancy? When you were pregnant, did you feel wonderful? Let's see, most women have a whole host of unpleasant symptoms during pregnancy that mimic those of menopause, including heat intolerance, night sweats, insomnia, fatigue, mood swings, irritability, cravings for just about anything, breast pain, urinary problems, weight gain. Were you ashamed of those symptoms or did you laugh about them? What I'm getting at here is attitude. Why is it that most women have a positive attitude about puberty and pregnancy, but a negative attitude about menopause? Why is it that we celebrate puberty and pregnancy, but deny, ignore, and minimize menopause? There is no way you can have happily ever after if you shun the very thing that will constitute your ever after. In listening to women about menopause, I hear a lot of words that imply doom and martyrdom. You know, actions and choices that involve accepting misery as if it's a badge of honor or something. I hear women say, "I'm going to just grin and bear it," or "I can just tough it out," or "I just have to get over the hump," or "I'll be miserable for now." I don't understand this assumption that menopause is supposed to be awful. It isn't. There is absolutely no reason that any woman has to be miserable for even a minute with menopause. Instead, women should look forward to menopause as a time when they have experience, wisdom, independence, freedom, and options. If you think about it, menopause is the one and only time in your entire life when you can control your hormones. You get to decide how you want to conduct your menopause management. I mean, you had absolutely no control over anything during puberty. You were still a kid. You weren't sure who you were, what you wanted, or how to get anything, even if you did know what you wanted. Pregnancy was even more limiting. You had to do what was best for the baby. You were but an incubator, and your hormones were raging out of control. But now, with menopause, you don't have to consider anything but what you want. It's all up to you. I can't think of a better way to achieve happily ever after than that. So if you embrace menopause positively as a time when you can take control, you can indeed manage it in a way that brings you happily ever after. And you have me to help you. You know, most of these fairy tales feature a tall, dark, handsome male who rescues the female. He might be a prince or even a knight in shining armor. Well, in the story of menopause, there's no hero to rescue you. While you may be a damsel in distress, you're a mature damsel. You don't need a man to rescue you. You can rescue yourself. That's what this education is all about. Learning what you need to know in order to save yourself. I always say that no one is ever going to take care of you as well as you can take care of yourself. But you can only take care of yourself if you have the education with which to do so. And I'm doing my best to give it to you. So I guess you could say that I'm the closest thing you're going to get to a knight in shining armor. Although I'm a far cry from a knight, and I can assure you that I won't be wearing any shining armor. In any case, I'll do what I can to help you create your very own happily ever after. You can call me Happily Ever After Barbie. Every single woman can have the happily ever after beginning with menopause. But only if she knows that menopause exists, prepares for it in advance, views the symptoms as no more oppressive than those of puberty or pregnancy, celebrates its arrival, has a positive attitude about it, rejects any expectation of martyrdom, and embraces menopause positively. There's a lot that can happen during your once upon a time. And just like the fairy tales you read as a child, even the most miserable situations can turn into happily ever afters. It is never, ever, ever too late to turn your menopause into happily ever after. If you need my personal attention, just go to menopausetailor.me and schedule a one-on-one consultation, and I'll help you find your best options for managing your menopause, your way to find your very own happily ever after. So don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe. And please come back in a week because we'll continue this and I'll address this very strange but real phenomenon of women being their own greatest enemies with regard to menopause. Bye.